So there have been quite a few requests by a lot of few people in the comments and in our messages as well that you need to have a plan forward for the next few days, specifically concerning the VARC portion of the CAT examination. So this video is just a humble attempt to address just that. So in this video I'll try to cover a particular path that you can follow in order to push your scores a bit higher. So if you're scoring in the 30-40 range, how exactly you can push them to probably 50 to 60 or even an higher range, or an even higher range. Okay, obviously it's not going to be the case that you would be able to push your scores from probably a single digit to something around 60 or 70. That is highly unlikely going to be the case. I'm not saying that it is impossible, but it is highly unlikely, because unlike the other two sections, VRC is not something that can be improved in a short span of time. It is something that takes time to be improved upon and constant hard work to improve upon. So it's really unlikely that you would be able to significantly and exponentially improve your scores in just a few days time. So let's start out by something that you are not supposed to be doing for the next few days. So the first idea is that I am probably the most vocal advocate of reading actively and frequently in order to improve your comprehension skills and your comprehension base, because reading a wide variety of text gives you the entire idea of dealing with, gives you the arsenal of dealing with different types of text, because we do not know what sort of reading comprehension passages, what sort of texts you will get on your actual CAT examination or even any other examination of that matter. So the best way to deal with that is to read as many different types of articles, as many different types of texts, or as many different types of books as possible. But that is something that is a fundamental approach. Obviously with just 25 days to go, that is not something that's going to work now. So that is not something that you're supposed to be doing at this juncture, at this point. Okay, if you are able to find any spare time that you would have spent on reading, probably use that time to solve a few more RCs, a few more VA problems, take another sectional or stuff like that. But it doesn't really make a lot of sense at this point to read a lot of lengthy articles, probably from websites like Aeon or from NetGeo or from Guardian. That doesn't make any sense at this point. That is something that you were supposed to be doing from probably the past few years or probably the past few months. That is not something that would make any sense now. If anything, that would probably be more harmful than you think, because you would just end up mixing everything up in your brain, and that is just going to end up confusing you even more. So for instance, if you come across an extremely difficult text or an extremely difficult article, you are probably going to be way more demotivated by that okay, I'm not able to understand that, so what do I do here? Am I really stupid? That shouldn't be the case. Okay, you shouldn't ever get that feeling, get that thought in your brain that you are stupid or you can't do that. It's totally fine to not understand something, but the important point here is that it's really not the time to spend time building your fundamentals. It's time to actually revise your concepts. Okay, it's actually time to get back in sync with your studies. If there had been if there had been a certain break or anything of that sort, it's basically the time where you just will just change the gear and just go in full force, that I just need to practice and practice. I just need to practice. I just need to analyze where I'm going wrong, and then you need to work upon those areas. Fundamental building is not something that you are supposed to be doing in the last 25 days or even the last 1 month. That said, you are only supposed to focus on your key areas, but that doesn't mean that you can completely disregard a certain area in itself. So for instance, if you're not good with para summaries, okay, at least practice enough para summaries so that you're able to identify the sitters and get them right. Because the weird part about this year's CAT examination is that we do not know the distribution of questions. We do not know how many questions you will get. So it's really tricky to understand how many questions you will get or what type of questions you will get, specifically around the verbal ability portion. It could be the case that you can get para jumbles or odd man outs or summaries, as we have been getting in the past 3 years, or it could be the case that CAT authorities basically reintroduce some other verbal ability topics such as critical reasoning or sentence correction or para completion or even vocabulary as of that matter. Although I personally believe that the probability of getting grammar or critical reasoning or vocabulary directly on your CAT examination as a VA portion question is a bit less. But then again, that is just my personal opinion, I could be wrong. You could actually see those questions on your examination as well. Among these, I honestly do not think that if you just have to drop one particular topic, make it sentence correction. Among all of these, I think sentence correction is the most difficult topic out there. It takes a tremendous amount of memory to remember all of the various rules and rules and structures, and then again you have to practice every single rule over and over again, all the combinations of all of the rules, or of all of the concepts. So I guess if there is one topic that you can skip out on, that is going to be sentence correction, but that's again only from the point of view of CAT. Sentence correction and grammar again forms a really large part of the other few management interest tests that you will be seeing, or probably you will be taking. But still, you cannot ignore any other question. Probably what you can do at this point is that you can go through the previous year CAT papers, understand what are the varieties of questions in the VA portion that you get, and practice 100 questions of every single category, so that you are at least aware of the different types of categories. We have been sharing a lot of these questions from a lot of these categories on our Facebook group. You can just search for these questions of all these categories and you can practice from there as well. Okay, the next idea is to obviously build a strategy that guesses the number of questions. You cannot do that. Okay, if everything that you're working towards is based upon a certain guess that has a high probability of being wrong, then don't do that. Specifically in the VARC portion, because that is not something that would make any sense on the exam scenario. Okay, or in any sort of exam setting. This does not work in IFT. This won't work in CAT either. Okay, the best thing that you can do is that you can take a lot of sections, you can take a lot of mocks, figure out a strategy of your own, and then see how that works out for you. Okay, just as an example, I have also given a model strategy towards the end of the video that you can look on in case you haven't yet figured out a strategy of your own. Although that shouldn't be the case, you should have a strategy of your own by now, but just in case you have only recently started your preparation, or you are just giving this a CAT attempt this year only for the hell of it, then just go through that, understand the thought process behind that strategy, and see whether that works for you as well. Okay, and on the same line, please do not try to assume a difficulty level of the examination. So we normally have this prediction that this could be a pretty easy examination. Okay, because there has been a pattern change, there has been a significant change from the past few years, but that doesn't particularly mean that you will get an easy or a difficult paper. Prepare for the worst case scenario, prepare for any sort of paper, have a strategy in place that what you will do if there is a difficult paper, what can you do in case there is an easy paper. Okay, have a strategy in place for every single difficulty category, and be prepared for everything. Okay, do not assume a certain difficulty level. That is not going to be helpful in any way. At the same time, do not try to copy paste anyone else's strategy. Although this is somewhat contradictory to what I just said, that I'll be giving a model strategy, but then again, that's just a model strategy. You have to modify that as per your own liking, as per your own strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so these are the things that you are not supposed to be doing. So what are the things that you should be doing? Okay, the first thing that you should be doing is that you need to take at least 15 to 20 VARC sections before your examination. These are strictly VARC sections. The mocks that you would be taking are completely different from that. You need to take a lot of full length mocks as well, so that you can build the stamina to sit for 2 hours, because just solving a section of 40 minutes versus taking a 2 hour long examination, specifically with 3 different sections, totally different sections, is a different game altogether. You need to take a lot of mocks, you need to take a lot of sections as well. Specifically if you're relatively weak in verbal ability, take at least 20 sections, probably take 1 section every day until you're CAT. Okay, and when I say that you need to take a lot of sections, it doesn't mean that you just go ahead, write a lot of sections and then just move on to the next one. Okay, you actually need to understand what you are doing. You need to analyze every single section that you are taking. Okay, I'll explain more on the analysis part in the next slide. Okay, but try to understand the basic idea that just solving question is not going to serve the purpose. Okay, you need to actually understand what you are doing, where you are going wrong, what exactly it is that's working for you, what are the tweaks that you need to make in order to push your score a bit higher, what exactly it is that you are doing wrong, figure that out, correct that out, or probably skip that out altogether. For instance, you might figure out that you completely suck at reading comprehension questions from the applications category. Okay, then it might be a better idea to not attempt those type of questions anymore. Okay, since we are relatively short on time. Okay, so you can only try to focus on your strengths. Okay, why do you want to spend so much time on an area that's hardly going to be two or three questions, when you can use the same time to probably build up on your strength? Okay, probably reduce your time there so you can attempt an extra verbal ability problem, instead of spending a lot of time practicing something that has a relatively low likelihood of being improved at this point. Okay, that is something that you are supposed to analyze, and then you are supposed to revise the areas where you are getting stuck. Okay, for instance, you're constantly getting para completions wrong, you're constantly getting odd man outs wrong, you're constantly getting summary questions wrong. Then it might be a good idea to go back to your classes, go back to your notes, practice quite a few questions from these categories, because by now you will have a certain direction that, okay, this is some place that I'm getting wrong. For instance, let's say you might be extremely bad at summaries, then it might be a good idea to practice a lot of summary problems, because these are the things that you can definitely improve by enough practice, by more and more practice. This is something where practice actually gives you immediate reward. Okay, so specifically from a VA standpoint, not RCs, just the VA standpoint, there are a lot of things that you can improve upon. Obviously, parajumble is not one of them, because the probability of getting a parajumble problem right is 1/24 as compared to 1/4 or 1/5 in the other question types. Okay, so I honestly think that parajumble is not an area where you should be spending a lot of time on at this point. If you are bad at parajumbles, try to practice a parajumbles. I'm not saying that completely disregard parajumbles, but do not have a lot of expectations from that particular area. Okay, probably use that time to work on segments, work on areas that can show you a relatively better improvement, that can actually push your score with a relatively higher probability, such as summary, such as odd man outs, okay, or even para completions of that matter. So instead of specifically if you are weak in the other two sections as well, okay, and you're just looking at a certain refresher, probably spending time instead of spending time on parajumbles, try to spend more time on summaries or other variants of RCs or other variants of verbal ability, because parajumble just has a relatively higher risk and lower reward. It's not like that you get extra marks for getting a parajumble right. It's going to be constant. So use your time judiciously. Okay, at the same time, and I think I touched upon this point briefly as well, that instead of reading a lot of articles, try to solve more RC. Even if you're getting 15-20 minutes, solve another RC, probably of an area that you're not comfortable with, whatever seals your boat, but solve more and more RCs. Try to solve at least 5 or 6 different RCs every single day, apart from the mocks and sections you are taking. But again, there has to be a certain priority. Your first priority is always going to be sectionals and mocks. Okay, everything else is secondary. Okay, because mocks and sections will give you that additional practice that you need. But you also, if you can find the time, if you're relatively weak in VARC, let's say you were good at quant, you were good at LRDA, but you are really struggling with VRC, then it might make more sense to spend more time at VRC and practice more and more RCs. Okay, basically build up your fundamental, build up your practice, and that is another way of improving the entire area. Okay, practice more RCs, probably target 5 or 6 RCs every day for the next 25 days. Even if you're just taking 25 RCs, on an average you would be able to solve 100 to 130 RCs, depending upon +1 -1 every single day. Okay, so even if you get a target of 100 RCs before CAT, that is easily attainable, that is easily achievable. So specifically if you are weak at RC, try to achieve these targets, try to do all of that. At the same time, when you are taking your mocks, when you are taking your sectional, there would be times where your score suddenly drops. Okay, and this idea might pop up in your head that what if I just increase my attempts, and then because I'm attempting more, my score will also obviously increase. Please do not make the mistake of doing this. Do not ever make the mistake of sacrificing accuracy for a slight or even a significant increase in attempts. You get marks for getting questions right, not for solving questions. Okay, please do not make the mistake of sacrificing accuracy for a slight increase in attempts. Please do not do that. Even if you're able to solve just 10 or 12 questions on your CAT examination, just solve those 10 and 12, but have an extremely high accuracy there. Okay, that alone will push your score higher. Specifically in the VRC portion, people just make the mistake of assuming that they know everything, because English is something that looks easy. Okay, people normally tend to over attempt in this section, and that obviously has a negative impact on their overall score. Okay, instead of negatively affecting your score, try to only focus on areas where you are good at. Try to only attempt questions where you are 100% sure. Okay, do not ever make the mistake of sacrificing accuracy just for the slight chance that increasing the number of questions will push your score forward. That is not going to happen. Okay, probabilistically as well, if you're marking everything as a fluke, okay, even then your score is going to be 0. So please do not make the mistake of sacrificing accuracy in the hopes that more attempts will equal more score. That does not work ever. Okay, what you can do is that you can methodologically work on your speed and accuracy. So for instance, let's say you are solving 10 questions, okay, with 90% accuracy, that is, you are getting 9 out of 10 questions right. What you can do at this point is that you can probably start to solve 12 questions instead of 10. That is a 20% increase in the number of questions attempt. Obviously when you do that, your speed, your accuracy will decrease a bit. Okay, so probably it might go from 90 to 80. What you can do at this point is that you can then work towards improving your accuracy again. Once this again starts to hit 90, for instance, you might get 11 out of 12 right. That's 11 out of 12 right on average. Okay, then you can again try to increase this number from 12 to, let's say, 13 or 14. Again your accuracy will take a nosedive. Okay, again you have to improve your accuracy. Once again this is around 90 or probably more than 90% ideally, you can try to improve this number more and more. It should not be the case that you are trying to directly jump from 10 to 50, 10 to 15 or 10 to 16. That will not work. It will just end up demotivating you, that you are not able to attempt more. You are not able to attempt more because your expectations are not right. Okay, you cannot take significant leaps at this point. Try to balance both your accuracy and speed, but never sacrifice speed. Never sacrifice accuracy for speed. Okay, always prioritize accuracy, and then if you're able to achieve this, if you're able to go through this, then increase your attempts, increase your overall attempts one by one and in bits and pieces. Okay, and the next idea is how exactly you are supposed to go about analyzing mocks. So let me just summarize this entire process. Okay, since I think I've shared a few documents on this topic as well. The best way of analyzing a certain sectional or a certain mock is that you need to retake the entire sectional, or you need to retake the entire mock without any time bound. Okay, so that you can patiently go through every single question. You can understand whether you would have gotten this right if there wasn't that panic of looking at the clock over and over again. Okay, you need to understand what are the mistakes that you have made. Did you get a certain question wrong because you were panicking because of the timer, or because of you were panicking in general in the exam condition, or was it some other sort of a silly mistake? Was it an actual comprehension problem that you had probably no idea how to go about this type of problem? That, for instance, you are solving an RC problem, you had no idea what an XYZ line would mean, or you could not really understand the passage because it was just that difficult. Okay, you need to basically understand and you need to classify every single mistake that you are making into 3 major categories. Is that a comprehension problem? Is that a silly mistake? Or is it just something that you do not know about? For instance, you may never have practiced enough para-completion problems. You may have never heard about fact inferences and judgments. So obviously it would make sense for you to get fact inference, judgment and para-completions wrong, because you have never practiced them. You have never read any theory about them. Okay, so what you can do in these scenarios is that you can go back to your notes. You can probably try to understand the fundamentals about these topics, and that will be a big leap. Okay, at the same time, you can avoid silly mistakes by keeping an active track of the mistakes that you are making. Probably make another Excel, whatever Excels you are maintaining. Okay, add another sheet there. Make a note of every single silly mistake you are there, and this is something that obviously you can do for the other 2 sections as well. Make a note of all the silly mistakes that you are making, and before every single section or every single mock that you are taking, just read out your silly mistakes so that you can actually subconsciously remember the mistakes that you are making and then try to actively avoid those. Okay, for the comprehension problems, now this is a bit fundamental. Obviously, suddenly if you are comfortable with, let's say, level 10 RCs or let's say level 100 RCs, it wouldn't make sense for you to try to attempt level 1000 RCs. Okay, sometimes it might be a better idea for you to only focus on your strengths. Okay, for instance, let's say you are really good at economics, let's say you are really good at finance in general, and you completely suck at philosophy. So it would make sense for you to score relatively less in philosophy based RCs. So try to focus on your strengths at this point, and in case you have any time left, in case there is any time left, then you can probably work around by practicing more philosophy based RCs, and then you can practice those as well. Okay, that will actually give you a certain base for these type of passages as well. If in case it's a complete comprehension problem because you are not even able to understand the entire text, the short way is to spend more time on that RC. Okay, Okay, spend more time, try to break down every single difficult and complex sounding statement. Obviously this is something that will take a lot of time, because even breaking down sentences during analysis is a bit time consuming. Okay, it will easily take you around 20 to 30 minutes if you are breaking down every single sentence of the RC. But that is the reason that, which is why I'm asking you guys to avoid working on areas where you have significant comprehension problems. Okay, but then again, there is always the risk where everything on the CAT exam will be something that you are not comfortable with. So there is obviously that risk as well. So try to work on that area as well, but try to first improve your strengths. Try to first build up on your strengths. Okay, try to bridge these gaps one way or the other. At the same time, you also need to understand how to improve your question selection. Okay, so for instance, you may have picked RC number 1 to attempt instead of RC number 2. Now, you could have gotten all 4 questions in this RC right. You could have scored a probably 75% or 100% accuracy there. But what is the opportunity cost there? You could have probably taken 11 minutes for this entire RC, whereas RC 2 could have been relatively easier. Okay, you could have probably gotten 100% accuracy there in probably, let's just say, 8 minutes. That is an additional 3 minutes that you could have saved. And those 3 minutes could have been used to solve probably 2 additional verbal ability problems. Again, try to understand the idea that opportunity cost plays a significant role on the examination, not just for VARC portion, but the other 2 areas as well. RCs are not like LRDI sets where you would be able to judge the or perceive the difficulty level by just glancing through it. You might actually have to skim through it. You might actually have to even skim the problems. I'll come to that later as well. But the overall idea is to understand how to improve your question selection. If you're bad at philosophy, it might make sense to probably attempt philosophy when you can't find anything else to attempt. Okay, if you are bad at parajumpers, it might make sense to attempt parajumpers towards the end. Okay, but you need to actively understand, you need to actively analyze that even if something lies outside your comfort zone, if there is something that lies outside your comfort area, it might actually be relatively easy. But again, the idea goes back to the understanding that in order to understand whether something is easy or difficult, you need to have a certain base for it. Okay, so just try to work on the area, try to work upon your question selection, because question selection and the attached opportunity cost is a significant thing, and it plays a pivotal role on your overall CAT score. Okay, once you have done all of this, once you have analyzed which questions you should be attempting, which question you should be skipping out on, okay, try to formulate a strategy. Okay, try to formulate how many questions you should be attempting, again depending on a certain percentage average, whatever method you come up with. Okay, try to come up with a certain strategy that works for you, that okay, probably attempting RCs first is a better idea for me, then moving to verbal ability makes a lot more sense, or it could be the other way around as well, or it could be a mix of both approaches where you're attempting probably 1 or 2 RCs, then you're moving to verbal ability, then you're again coming back to RCs. Try to figure out what works for you based on your strengths, based on your weaknesses. Okay, try to understand, try to ascertain, try to analyze what is working for you and go in that particular direction. Do not confuse or mix up a lot of things. Do not ask a lot of people advice, because specifically in the VARC portion, what is working for me may prove to be disastrous for you. Okay, for instance, let's talk about speed again. Okay, so a lot of people have this notion that speed is just about how quickly you're able to solve a question. That is again not the case. Speed is also about how quickly you are able to understand whether you are not supposed to attempt that question or not. Okay, speed is about how quickly you are able to solve something and how quickly you are able to understand that you are not supposed to be solving this. Now, the CAT examination is not something that is extremely difficult. If given enough time, every single question can be solved. But on the exam condition, which questions should be attempted first, that is the entire game in a lot of ways. Okay, it could be the case that something that can only be solved by 4 or 5 minutes of work is being attempted by a lot of people, and then that question could easily be skipped. In case towards the end you get 4 or 5 minutes with you can try to attempt that. Okay, but again, that is not something that makes any logical sense. Okay, you do not get extra marks for solving difficult questions, so why do that? First, solve the easier questions first, solve the medium to difficult or easy to medium level questions, and then move to the difficult ones, not the other way around. First, secure a base score and then work towards the difficult ones. Okay, speed can be increased by improving your question selection, not just by practicing more and more. Question selection also directly impacts your speed. Okay, With all of that, you will have a basic understanding of what is working for you, what is not working for you. Try to bridge everything, try to categorize everything into a certain strength or a certain opportunity or a certain weakness or a certain threat. Try to work upon your strengths, try to work upon the opportunities, try to skip out on your threats and weaknesses. Okay. At the same time, let's talk more about question selection. Okay. So how exactly can you skim? One way of skimming is to just glance through the entire RC in the question paper mode. So I think Gaurav had also suggested the same approach to scan the entire question paper in question paper mode when you are trying to skim out, when you're trying to select the first few sets of your LRDI part. Okay, a similar approach can also be used for the VARC part. As in, you can open the question paper mode, you can skim through the first 2 or 3 RCs, and then you can figure out whether you should be attempting these RCs or which RCs you should ideally start with. Okay, use the question paper mode. That's a really effective way of skimming the questions and skimming the RC as well. Okay, spend around 1.5 to 2 minutes skimming just the RCs or the questions if you can, and try to pick a certain RC to begin with, because picking the first RC is really crucial. It gives you a certain momentum for the entire paper, and not just for the VA part but for the other 2 sections as well. Because ideally, when we were just starting out with the entire paper, we are relatively slow, our mind is just not that active, which is probably one reason why the first RC takes us relatively longer time. So if you are able to complete the first RC in relatively lesser time, then that basically pushes you to attempt the entire paper in a much more structured way, in a much more confident manner. So try to improve your question selection, try to improve your skimming processes. Okay, pick something that you're comfortable with. How exactly you can improve your question selection is that you can pick something that doesn't look too lengthy, that doesn't seem to contain a lot of lengthy words. Okay, something complex sounding words. It's not surrounded by complex jargon that is difficult to understand. It's not something that is based on an area that you are completely uncomfortable with. Okay, or it could be something that's purely because of length. Lengthier RCs obviously will be more time consuming, so you can probably push them towards the end or probably push them towards round 2. Okay, skim out the RCs, skim out the questions if you can, and try to pick out an RC that should be attempted first and should be attempted second. Attempt those RCs. By the time you'll have enough momentum to go through the entire paper, and then you can use your strategies that we just talked about, and we will be talking about in the next segment as well. Then you can use those strategies to move ahead with the rest of the paper. But the initial momentum is crucial. It is pivotal for the entire paper, not just for the VARC section. Okay, if in the worst case scenario you're not able to improve upon the skimming portion, you're not able to understand just by skimming which RC should be attempted, start to look at the questions. Okay, if the questions are something that lie within your comfort zone, for instance, let's say you're extremely good at inferences, let's say you're extremely good at data and specific based question or even universal type questions, then you can just jump on the RC where the percentage question of these areas is relatively higher. So let's say you are relatively bad at application based question, then try to avoid RCs that have a lot of application based questions. Okay, so that is another way that you can use to skim. So instead of skimming the RC, or probably just partially skimming the RC or partially skimming the questions as well. Okay, and when we talk about skimming questions, we do not normally skim out the options, we just read the question stem in itself. Okay, not the answer options of the question. Moving on, what exactly are we supposed to do? So we have just talked a lot about what not to do, what's the strategy, etc, etc. So let's just actually understand what we can do at this point. Okay, so there is a lot that we can do. Okay, you can take a lot of sectionals and mocks, you can analyze them. Just these 2 steps in order of priority will give you a lot of background to work with. You will come across a lot of areas that can be improved upon significantly. For instance, you might come across the fact that you are constantly getting a specific detailed questions wrong because of silly mistake. Probably you're not verifying the information. Probably you're getting a lot of universal questions wrong because you're not making a certain map. Okay, because you're not mapping the entire RC properly. Okay, so probably just go around and work on those things, and that alone will avoiding the silly mistakes as well is probably another thing that you can take away from the analysis as well. Just working on these basic concepts will push your score higher. Okay, at the same time, trying to analyze your strengths, trying to understand what your strengths and your core areas are, and just trying to make them even better is another thing that you can do. Okay, and coming to the other part, what you can do, one thing that I will recommend everyone watching this video to do is that just go back to specifically the past 3 years, that is six papers, two papers of 17, 2 papers of 18, 2 papers of 19. I understand that the pattern has changed, but still attempt these papers, specifically the VRC section. Attempt the entire VRC section in a 40-minute time bound. Analyze them properly, just run it through the analysis process that we just talked about, and then understand how you would have scored in that particular mock, in that particular paper. Okay, try to understand where you could have gone wrong, try to analyze everything about these papers. Okay, and if you can find the time, try to go back to as many CAT papers as you can. The more papers that you can solve, the better it is. Ideally, you should be going through probably till 1995 at least. You should have done all of these papers at least twice before your CAT. But if nothing works, if you are probably short on time, at least do the last 3-year papers at least twice, specifically the VRC portion. Okay, understand which VA problems needs working, understand the areas where you need to focus on, understand and ascertain and analyze every single thing there is to analyze about these papers. Okay, for AG students, we have already discussed all of these papers in classes. In case you have somehow missed on these sessions, the recording is already available on your dashboards. Okay, so that is the that is the structured plan that I have for you people. And let's again talk about speed. Okay, I think I have majorly covered this portion as well, but then again I'll still summarize the entire discussion again. Speed is not just about how quickly you're able to solve something. Speed is also about how quickly you're able to determine whether this question needs to be solved or not. For difficult problems, we try to attempt difficult questions towards the end, specifically when it comes to RCs, because RCs are time consuming. One RC can on an average be done in around 7.5 to 8.5 minutes, but there will be RCs on your examination in all probability that will take a lot of time, that might even take you 11 to 12 minutes. Now that is a really huge opportunity cost on the examination scenario that might just change the entire course of your paper. Try to understand a really simple thing, that even if you are able to take 20 to 30 seconds, if you are able to reduce just 20 to 30 seconds from every RC, okay, on an average, then you will still have around 60 to 90 seconds extra. Okay, and those 60 to 90 seconds can be used to solve probably 1 or 2 more VA problems, and those 1 or 2 problems can basically push your percentile by a significant margin. They are 4 or 8 marks that we are talking about. If you are stuck in a 99 percentile range, those 4 marks will basically push you towards 99.5 or even 99.6. They might push you to 99.5 or 99.6 even. Okay, you need to take this concept seriously, that when we talk about speed, it shouldn't be the case that you are trying to reduce the average time of RCs from, let's say, 10 minutes to 5 minutes. That is not going to work. Okay, that's not how it should be done. What you can do instead is that you can try to reduce the overall time of per RC by probably 10, 15, 20 seconds, and then use the extra time to solve more VA problems, or probably try to squeeze in another RC problem that you are not normally able to solve. Okay, again I'll say the same thing, that speed can only be improved in bits and pieces. The primary focus should always be on accuracy. Okay, if your accuracy is extremely high, it's really good, probably something around 90, probably more than 90%. Obviously the ideal accuracy is 100%, but from a more realistic and a practical standpoint, anything above 90% is extremely good. So if your accuracy is already above 90% or more, then you can try to work on your speed. You can in bits and pieces try to improve your number of attempts. If you are attempting 12, try to attempt 13 or 14. Your accuracy will take a hit, then try to work on your accuracy, then again try to work on your attempts. Okay, it has to be a methodological, systematic approach. It should not be completely random. It should not be unrealistic. It has to be systematic. It has to be practical. You ideally cannot expect yourself to double the number of attempts and then accuracy to stay the same. It's not going to be the case. It will take time and effort. It needs to be methodological and it needs to be systematic. Okay, lastly, here's the model strategy that I talked about. So this is something that is really simplistic. Okay, so for the first 25 to 30 minutes or even 20 to 30 minutes, you try to attempt 2 or 3 RCs with a couple of VA problems. So here's the simple idea. Let's say you are taking 8 minutes per RC. Okay, so 2 or 3 RCs will take you around 16 to 24 minutes, and the ideal distribution for a VA problem is 1.5 minutes. So the VA part will take you around 4.5 to 7.5 minutes roundabout. Okay, So if you just add it out, it will be probably less than 30 minutes, and then you can use the remaining 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes to solve the round 2. Probably you can go back to the difficult RCs that you have left with, or the difficult VA problems that you are left with. Okay, so the fundamental idea here is that you first prioritize the easy or medium questions, easy and medium problems, and then you go to the difficult problems. Okay, so go with the simple approach. So for instance, it could be the case that you are relatively lower on that your speed is on the lower side, so this part alone will take you a lot of time. Probably this part alone will take you 40 minutes. So again, that is not the idea that we are dealing with. Okay, that's totally fine. If you are in that range, different people have different speed, different people have different accuracy rates. That's totally fine. I'm just talking about from an ideal standpoint. Okay, but the idea in this particular case would be that complete round 1 and then move to round 2 in a systematic manner. So if you're able to complete this in, let's say, 40 minutes, okay, try to reduce this to, let's say, 38 or 37 minutes. You get an extra 3 minutes, and then use those 3 minutes to solve probably 1 or 2 more VA problems. That is probably one way through which you can improve your attempts as well. Okay, the idea here is, well, in round 1, let's say in the RC part your accuracy is around 90%. Okay, so out of these 8 or 10 questions, let's say if you're solving 2 RCs in the first go, okay, out of these let's say 10 problems, you got 9 right. Okay, and out of these 5 VA problems, let's say you got 4 right. Okay, 4 out of 5, so that's still 13 out of 15 problems. Okay, let's say you are now left with 10 minutes. In these 10 minutes you can solve one difficult RC, let's say with a 75% accuracy. That's again a 4 out of 5. Okay, so overall you would be getting a 17 out of 20. Okay, so this is probably one way that the more time that you can squeeze out of the other area. So for instance, this is taking you 10 minutes. Probably if you squeeze this to 9 minutes, you will be able to solve one more VA problem. Then it would be probably the same idea, that you just keep on improving your attempts in a certain manner. And again, this is just a certain example. I'm not asking you guys to replicate the same thing. You have to figure out your own strategy based on your analysis, based on your performance, etc., etc. And based on all of that, you can have a variant of that. So for instance, instead of 2 or 3 RCs, you can attempt all of the RCs first and then move to the verbal ability part. Or it could be the case that you start with VA, then move to the RCs part, and then move to round 2 in a certain fashion, in a certain manner. Or it could be the case that you solve 3 RCs, solve the entire VA, and then move to the remaining difficult RCs. That's entirely up to you. There can be infinite iterations of the same strategy, of the same model. Okay, or it could be the case that this does not make sense for you at all. Then you need to analyze these things on your own. If this does not work out, then you need to figure out a strategy of your own, because I can guarantee that there will be a lot of cases where this will not work. Okay, so I hope you guys got something out of this video. That will be all from my own. That will be all from my end. Please let me know in case there are any questions or queries or concerns. I'll be more than happy to address them. Thank you.